watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. For more than 24 hours now, India has been in a frenzy about just how the government should respond to Pakistan's latest aggression, the terror attack in Uri that has killed 18 soldiers. Today, the Prime Minister chaired a meeting with senior ministers and decided that a knee-jerk response would not be the answer. So the first move, it seems, would be to isolate Pakistan globally and diplomatically. The question is, will it work? Well, senior ministers of the Government of India, the Home Minister, the Defence Minister as well as the Army Chief held that meeting with the Prime Minister this morning to brainstorm on India's response. And what we do know, one, is that what the Prime Minister has said is that there should be a diplomatic offensive to isolate Pakistan globally. That means at the United Nations, at other forums as well. Nawaz Sharif is going to make a speech at the UN General Assembly in just a couple of days. India is expected to respond strongly to that. Also, sources saying that international bodies will be presented with actionable evidence of Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, while the Director General of Military Operations has also been instructed to share whatever evidence has been gathered at Uri with his Pakistani counterpart. In fact, the DGMO, while speaking to the media this evening, said very clearly that India reserves the right to respond to Pakistan at a time and place of its choosing. The big question is, even though India has not kept the military option off the table, if indeed the diplomatic offensive is going to be the key in this strategy to take on Pakistan, is it something that's going to work? And is there anything else that India can really do? Joining us on the program tonight, we have Mr. Amarjeet Singh Dullat, the former chief of the RNAW, Christine Fair, senior political scientist who's visiting India. Happy to have her here with us. She writes extensively on India-Pakistan ties and watches Pakistan closely. Senior advocate Dushyant Dave joins us tonight, and Mr. Dave is here also as a private citizen who has been working and dealing with the armed forces for many years now, and has a very strong view on the way our armed forces are dealing with these crisis situations. Lieutenant General Shankar Prasad, the former Director General of Infantry, is with us, and Mr. GVL Rao of the BJP. Mr. Dullat, let me ask you first. Now, these are the initial reports that are coming in. It appears that India is not rushing in to respond in any one way or the other. What do you think, though, of this initial response?
I think it's just perfect. You know, what the Prime Minister said at the outset, that this would not go unpunished. So I think a message has been sent. And I don't think we need any knee-jerk reactions. This should be thought out coolly and then decide. I would put it in two parts. You know, one is a long-term strategic way of dealing with Pakistan. I think we need to think that out properly, that how are we going to deal with this difficult neighbor of ours. And the second is, what is our response to Uri going to be? Now, if it is going to be a diplomatic offensive, which has been tried in the past, we've referred to it as coercive diplomacy. We did it during Kargil, we did it after the attack on Parliament, we did it after the attack on Kaluchak, and of course the Mumbai attack. So it has worked. It has worked to a certain extent. And if your other options are limited, I'm not saying that we don't have other options, but if they are limited, then this is not a bad option to go down the same road. And as I said, it has paid dividends in the past. The other thing, we
keep coming back to the same thing. You know, it may have paid dividends, but we come back to another attack and we go through the same cycle. So if you are going to do a diplomatic offensive, Mr. Dullat, what can it be that would be different this time from the way we've done it in the past? And you know, when you have a country like China that is such a close ally of Pakistan, that immediately becomes a problem in globally isolating Pakistan.
You see, you mentioned that the DGMOs have been talking. The DGMOs always talk. That's a pro forma kind of thing. Whenever they talk, even if there's no attack or whatever it is. And this is a very bad attack. There's no doubt about that. I would rather that the NSAs, who have, I think, a pretty good equation. This, I don't know. I hope they still have. I think this is a time when they must meet. It's crucial, because this is the only back channel that we have. There is no other back channel with Pakistan. Or you say we are not going to, you know, in the past also we've called off diplomatic relations with Pakistan. Well, that is always on the table. If that,
very interesting that you suggest a back channel between the NSAs at this time. But Christine Fair, what's your assessment of this as you watch this? do you do you get a sense of deja vu, or do you believe that the Uri attack is actually a turning point in the way India will deal with Pakistan?
So going to your point, I mean, so I'm obviously a hawk. I've been very disappointed with how my country deals with Pakistan, and I see a lot of parallels, which is we really are in policy lethargy. Policymakers, both in your country and in my country, are very risk averse. They don't want to try something new. I think both of our countries are very much bullied by Pakistan's nuclear weapons program. In all of the decades I spent in Pakistan, I never heard a Pakistani say, you know, we can't dispatch terrorists to India because they have nuclear weapons. But in the Indian discourse, whenever there's any discussion about penalizing them for their terrorism, this is inevitably where it goes. Well, you know, they have nuclear weapons. So I think that these back channel conversations are really pointless, because at the end of the day, Pakistan really only has one tool to engage India, and it uses the same tool to extract money from my country, and that is terrorism under its nuclear umbrella. And at the fundamental core, Pakistan benefits from this because it never bears the costs of its actions. So from Pakistan's point of view, the very fact that the United Nations is going to be engaged in discussing Kashmir because of this Uri attack actually is a benefit to Pakistan. So
which is why the attack happened.
Which is why the attack happened. And, you know, and of course it was also, I was just, before I came out here, I was just looking at my watch saying, when is the terror attack going to happen after the Balochistan speech? You'll recall after the Myanmar situation, Pakistan answered that with Gurdaspur, and then Udhampur, and then Pathankot. So Pakistan keeps calling this government's bluff. And from an outsider, you know, the previous government said nothing and did nothing. This government talks a lot but does nothing. I'm of the belief that your country and my country need to make Pakistan bear the cost of its actions. I was a very strong proponent of Cold Start. I think India needs to develop basically low end of the conflict spectrum means to punish Pakistan. And I know this has generated some controversy in today's news cycle. I would frame this very differently. India will talk about conventional deterrence. It'll talk about nuclear deterrence. You also need to think about sub-conventional deterrence.
Well, that is interesting because a former army chief actually raised that point on our channel yesterday. And I come to the two of you because you have very different ways on how you think it should be approached. But General Shankar Prasad, if I could ask you to weigh in on that. We've heard the DGMO saying that India, of course, reserves the right to respond at a time and place of its choosing. But do you believe, sir, that India really has, India has the option, of course, to take military action? But is that really a feasible option? That's the question. Christine Fair believes it does, that we should call Pakistan's bluff. Mr. Dullat is a little more cautious.
Well, I actually agree with both of them. The first sentence which I heard on your channel right now was the Prime Minister's statement saying we cannot have a knee-jerk reaction. We need to have a more considered, deliberated response. A perfect statement by a Prime Minister, which was not so yesterday. This statement is a good statement. Now there are two facets to it. One is a tactical response and one is a strategic response. What the Prime Minister is talking about is developing a strategic response. What we are talking about is developing a tactical response. Tactical response has been developed many times earlier. It can be developed again at a date and time and place of our choosing, completely left to the regular military army located in the line of control, restricting itself to the POK. And that we have done many times earlier. You will recall we have created certain huge damages on Pakistan defense works in the past. We can do that again. But is that going to have a lasting effect is the question. I'm afraid it is not. I think this time the Pakistan's bluff has to be called. There has got to be a long-term prepared reaction, which is something that Pakistan will really bring it to its knees. And that is the issue that is there. People talk about Chinese assistance to Pakistan. People talk about Pakistan becoming nuclear. Those can be taken care of by many other methods that we have at our disposal. Today, the Prime Minister has met the two principal ministers of the CCS, primarily the Home Minister and the Defence Minister. I sincerely hope that the entire CCS will meet soon enough. And the CCS should not only have the Army Chief. So far, I've only heard in the television channel the Army Chief participating in all these discussions along with his DGMO. I think the time has come for the Armed Forces Chiefs to be on board on this business. the air chief, the
I
naval
agree
chief
with
and
you,
the army chief
but
with their respective
I have to
operations
say that
officers
what-
need to be on
sure,
board.
But I have to say what surprised me, given that the headline that came out of today's
Yeah.
meeting was a diplomatic offensive, was that the foreign minister wasn't there. All the ministers were there except Sushma Swaraj. Even the foreign secretary is travelling at
Absolutely.
this point. And Mr. GVL Rao, if I could get you into
Precisely.
that.
That's
Shouldn't
exactly
Sushma
what I'm trying
Swaraj
to
have
say.
been at this meeting? She's the one who lead the
That's
diplomatic
exactly what
offensive.
I'm trying to say, Nidhi.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the concerned ministers are absent.
Yeah, exactly.
The diplomatic offensive is to be orchestrated by the foreign
exactly.
ministry.
Sushma Swaraj will be at the UN in a week, Mr. Rao. Shouldn't she have been there? It's still a mystery why she wasn't.
The reason why I think we should not be speculating about the absence of the minister. She has been helping this ministry very effectively, and she's been going to the world capitals at the initiative, at the instance of the Prime Minister, because Prime Minister himself has proved himself to be extremely savvy on foreign policy. It's the Prime Minister who has been articulating or attempting to isolate Pakistan on all global platforms and to a phenomenal effect. This isolation of Pakistan doesn't have to begin now. Prime Minister did that in G20 summit. He did that in ASEAN summit. We have had statements coming from the US President, US Secretary of State. You have had spokespersons of the White House making comments about making statements asking Pakistan to ensure that perpetrators of 26/11 are brought to justice. The Defense Secretary of the United States refused to sign military aid to Pakistan hardly a couple of weeks ago. So the India's attempts at isolating Pakistan have begun quite a good time ago, and they have been yielding results. To my mind, Pakistan's attempts at some kind of forcible infiltration and giving effect to this kind of an attack is more of a sign of desperation, and this is going to further isolate Pakistan.
But Mr. Rao, the
because
foreign minister
India's
has to
case
be
and
part
India's
of those
position would
discussions.
be far more strengthened.
The MEA, the foreign ministry, has to also be part of those discussions. Otherwise, Mr. Modi can have the external affairs portfolio. She is still the external affairs minister. She's going to the United Nations. She'll be speaking there next week. It's still baffling why she's not part of this discussion. If we're going to go all out, let's involve the minister concerned, is my question.
No, I answered that right at the beginning. Do not speculate on these issues. And if she was not a part of this meeting, she could possibly meet separately, and there could be reasons why she could not attend today. But certainly, she is the one who is being deputed to the UN by the Prime Minister. She continues to be a minister in the government because Prime Minister has trust in her, not because you or me like Sushma Swaraj. It is the Prime Minister who has given her that position. It is the Prime Minister who will ensure that she is able to
General Shankar Prasad has a quick point before I come to Mr. Dave.
Different fora.
Nidhi,
General Prasad, yes.
Nidhi, I just want to make one small point. You see, there is something called the Cabinet Committee of Security, which has all the principal cabinet ministers who are members, which includes the finance minister, the foreign minister, the defense minister, the home minister, and this group is chaired by the prime minister. And people are invited to this, those who are concerned with the issue of national security, for example, the service chiefs, the chief of the RNAW, and the other involved people, whether it's the paramilitary or whether it's the IB and others, depending upon what the task is. Therefore, there is a very well laid down procedure in the government of India which is called the CCS. Why isn't the CCS meeting? Why isn't the CCS meeting an appropriate place in an operations room where all the maps, aids, 3D dimensions are all available? My point is this, while the Prime Minister's statements are perfectly in order, but the method that is being adopted is something that is making it a bit disjointed. If everybody has to get together and contribute towards the national might, the whole lot of them must sit together and discuss it. Not 1 day, 2 days, 3 days.
I think that's a very
it will be a
important
discussion
point
that
about
goes
the
on
Cabinet Committee on
periodically
Security.
to see how we are upgrading our capabilities.
Absolutely. Mr. Dave, as you hear this whole argument about what India's options are internationally, you have a concern though that you believe that India needs to strengthen its defences at home. And that should be the bigger focus more than anything else. Mr. Dave.
Nidhi, let me begin with few caveats. First, I don't work with the army. I support the army. in every which way. Financially, I've been supporting, whether it's post-Kargil or whether it's, some martyrs who die, their widows, I try and help them. I appear in Supreme Court free of charge for every army man who has an issue. I supported the OROP, and I went, in fact, to Jantar Mantar and gave a speech there to support the armed forces. So that's something different. That's in my capacity, as a citizen. I respect army. I love them, in fact, the armed forces. And I think that we all Indians should be really proud of them. But having said that, let me tell you something which is very, very important. This attack exposes the chinks in our armor. And neither the Prime Minister, Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, the so-called, Cabinet Committee on Security, all owe an explanation to this country that why is it that time and again the terrorists can attack the most vulnerable and most highly secure installations like army camps or air bases. It's a very, very serious matter where they need to tell the country that why is it that they have not taken any action. Post Pathankot, it is inconceivable that any country would have left its army camps insecure as they have done today. Now imagine the situation that if army camps, which is supposed to be so secure, is being attacked like this, what will happen to other installations which are vulnerable? For example, Supreme Court. I can tell you, I go to Supreme Court every day, and I fear for the day when God forbid an attack like this should take place, because every security man, and there are 500 men guarding Supreme Court, are absolutely careless about their duties. There is no responsibility, there is no sincerity. Now army therefore must tell the nation why is it that they are behaving the way they are behaving, allowing these terrorists. Don't you have guards? Don't you have CCTV cameras? Don't you have guard dogs? How is it that terrorists can enter and make these kind of attacks, time and again?
Christine
So
Fair wants to come in on the extremely valid point that you're making, because I think we often turn our attention only towards Pakistan and its terrorism that's exported to India, and Christine Fair, often we tend to gloss over the lapses at home, and that's dangerous as well.
So the thing that I thought was, so obviously there was an insider here, right? Because they had very specific information about troop rotations. They knew that as one group was moving in, another would be training out. Exactly. So they knew that there was both an unusual number of troops there, and they also knew that these were not housed in any kind of fortified arrangement. So when you see very specific information like that, it does suggest that there's an insider problem. And so that's very disconcerting. And so I think he makes a superb point. Like how did they come to know about this? The other thing I just wanted to make very briefly is just a brief intervention on this panacea of diplomatic isolation. Remember, from 1990 to 2001, Pakistan was thoroughly diplomatically isolated. They were under numerous American sanctions. We had completely cut off defense ties with them. But during that period of, I would argue, their most intense diplomatic isolation, they were running insurgencies in Afghanistan,
Kashmir,
the Punjab, and Kashmir. So we should not think that just because they are diplomatically isolated that somehow they're going to behave differently.
You want to take that on that point? That diplomatic sanctions or isolation doesn't help, is what she's saying.
Well, there's no correlation.
Like I said, and I think General Shankar Prasad made the same point, that you got to think this out strategically, and you got to think it out tactically in two parts. There's a long-term thing of how do we deal with Pakistan, whether we need to engage with Pakistan, whether we need to we give up diplomatic relations with Pakistan and then deal with Pakistan. And
you don't think cutting off ties, expelling high commissioners is the solution then, as we've done in the past?
I don't think so. I don't think so. As far as the point which Mr. Dave made, it's a good point. But and I would go along with what Christine just said, that possibly these guys who came in knew about what was going on. It need not be somebody from the inside, but it may be somebody from the outside who knows the terrain, who knows what is happening around there. The fact of the matter is that we know that in our neighborhood there is this terrorist factory where they keep manufacturing these guys. And if there are 4 guys who come in and are prepared to die, there's very little that you can do.
But as Christine says, this time you need to make Pakistan pay. you say that you can't stop
My-
talking,
my-
you need to have a back channel at least with the NSAs.
I
You
say
both have a
that-
very
I
different
say
approach
that-
to the
I
same
say
problem.
that as on a long-term thing, and if the armed forces, the point which Shankar Prasad made, that why wasn't the air chief or the naval chief present there? Now, if the armed forces are ready, and if we think war is an option, in the past it's been considered, and we've come to the conclusion that war is not an option. And if war is not an option, then talking makes sense, whichever way you talk.
Well, Mr.
And-
Rao,
and
if you, I just wanted to get Mr. GVR Rao then on the point that both Mr. Dave and what Mr. Dulat and Christine Fair are saying. Are we not looking enough within in terms of how to prevent these attacks from taking place? Do we need to focus more on that and shore up our defenses? Because to that extent, Mr. Dulat is right. If there is a suicide squad that is out there to come and attack, you can't stop them beyond a point. So we need to shore up our defenses. Your comment on that first, Mr. Rao.
Certainly, there is a need all the time to improvise and improve upon your mechanisms, defense mechanisms. But it would be uncharitable. What Mr. Dave said to my mind, I would say these are uncharitable remarks towards our brave army, because you are pointing out this we are discussing because it's a grave attack. And our soldiers and our Jawans got killed. It really hurts the entire psyche of the entire country. But then I can show you there are many such instances in the last week, last month, that were successfully foiled by the same army, where tens and dozens of militants have been killed. I think it would be very uncharitable to hold them account, to call them to say they have really been unsuccessful. I think would be being very unfair to the army. I can show you on September 12th there are media reports. 7 militants killed in Jammu and Kashmir as army foils infiltration bid across along LOC.
Is it uncharitable for us to say that our own army shouldn't be attacked?
They are battling every
Mr.
day.
Dave? Mr. Dave?
Well, let me say one thing. I think Mr. Rao perhaps seriously misunderstood me. I would be the last person to be uncharitable to the armed forces. What I have done for the armed forces, I don't think Mr. Rao would ever be able to do in his lifetime. So he should not be, telling me that I am uncharitable. I mean, he is the last person who should say that. Let me say one more thing, that you have today, a very serious situation, as Mr. Dulat rightly points out, of, outside terrorism. And we have the National Security Guard, which is an outfit created under the law of Parliament to fight terrorism. Why don't we shift 1,000 NSG guards in Kashmir instead of allowing army to defend itself? They are specially trained in counter-terrorism. We must use them rather than, protecting our politicians like Mulayam Singh, Mayawati, Jayalalitas and God knows who. So I think we need to really introspect today what we want to do to protect ourselves rather than, let's understand one thing. Pakistan isolated, everybody would love. I would also love. But is far more dangerous to India than Pakistan, with whom we have a dialogue. We must understand that the Nawaz Sharif government is a lame duck government. It has no control over itself. The army calls the shots. And if army is not going to be engaged by us to find, because the civil society in Pakistan is also sick and tired. Pakistan has suffered more terrorist strikes in last 3 years than India has. They have lost more men and women. We must engage them if possible, because war is certainly not an option. For 17 brave men's death, if we are going to have thousands of people killed, I think it would be stupid on our part to even consider war as an option. We must engage Pakistan as much as possible.
Well, I think there are very different views on this panel tonight. General Prasad, I just have 30 seconds, sir. If you could close the show for us with what Mr. Dave was saying about strength for the army to strengthen its own security at its installations.
I would somewhat agree. We need to be more careful. Certainly we need to be more careful. But I also agree with Mr. Dullat. Such things cannot be prevented. But I just want to close on another issue. Nidhi, military option is one strategic option. Can we not visit the Indus Water Treaty? Isn't water a weapon with us? So when I say that we must develop an all-harnessing activity of every capability that India possesses today, that is the strategic offensive that we are talking about. Military offensive. We can revisit the Indus Water Treaty. We can do a couple of other things in trade and commerce. We can isolate internationally. We can put certain pressures on by other means. Through China we can put pressure as well. So my suggestion today is the complete strength of the country must be united and work together to unleash it on Pakistan. We
Well,
could
I
liberate
think-
East Pakistan and create a Bangladesh. We prepared for 6, 7, 8, 9 months.
Well,
why can't
I
we
think
handle this?
I think also right now
War-
there's just
we will
not
see how
enough
war
clarity on
unfolds
what
itself.
even that diplomatic offensive is going to involve over the next few weeks and months. Let's see how all of this is panned out, and certainly I don't expect the government to make an announcement that it's planning a military strike of some kind or any kind of military action, certainly not on TV, nor should they, may I say. But thank you to you all for joining us. I wish we could have continued this conversation. There's still a lot to talk about in the next few days, so do join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.